What is going on, everyone? It is Lewis from the Lewis and Kyle Show. I wanted to record a different style video for you today, try a bit more of a monologue, just me reflecting on some of the various things that I've learned that I would like to share with whoever's watching this video from having reached a couple of big milestones for the podcast. Past couple weeks, we crossed 150 episodes, which is amazing, and we also crossed 3 years of publishing episodes on the show. It's been an amazing, life-changing experience, genuinely, and I have learned so much from every single one of the guests. I want to share with whoever's watching this video the 5 most important things that I personally am taking away from having had the opportunity to spend an hour with so many incredible people over the years. If you haven't looked through the whole channel or you found us relatively recently, myself and Kyle, a buddy that I met in college who's since become my best friend, we have interviewed 150 incredible people. Most of them fall into, probably 80% of them fall into these 3 categories: entrepreneurs, investors, authors. A lot of those entrepreneurs are digital entrepreneurs. They run online businesses, but not necessarily all of them. A lot of the investors are in things like real estate. A lot of them are also in crypto. A lot of them are in alternative investing vessels. There's a lot of those episodes if you look back into the feed. Then there's also some incredible authors of books that you've probably read on Amazon. One of the more popular ones, Eric Jorgensen, wrote a book called The Almanac of Naval Ravikant, and there are several other incredible guests that we've been lucky enough to speak with. This video, like I said, 5 takeaways from my experience, from what I feel like I've learned from the chance to speak with all of these incredible people over the past 3 years. The first 2 are going to be very, very tactical, and the last 3 are somewhat philosophical, but I think equally relevant to help you understand how to live a better life and be happier, all of those beautiful things that we're all striving for. So, a couple of things from me. First takeaway is about, and I have a little cheat sheet over here so I can remember the 5 and not force myself to keep them in my head. I like recording conversations. I like writing down ideas. That's why I have a podcast, and that's why I write on the internet. Makes a lot of sense. Okay, first takeaway is the importance of having a coach and or a therapist. So a common theme among the people that myself and Kyle have decided to bring on the show is they are high performers in one or many areas of their life. Oftentimes, high performance is a personality trait that cascades and that represents itself and manifests in every area of your life, though that's not always the case. Just generally, people who hold themselves to a higher standard in one area of their life end up expecting the same from themselves across everything that they do. And in order to be a high performer, someone who has exceptional results, so much so that people like myself and Kyle just are so eager to have this opportunity to speak with them, one of the common traits of that in a high performer, really in any field, is that they have help getting there. I, for example, work with a coach. I actually interviewed him in episode 150 of the podcast, and that actually makes a lot of sense because I had been beaten over the head from the previous 149 episodes to hire a coach. And I don't want to say I'm sad that it took me so long to finally take that advice and to finally listen to my guests and find Vash. It just took me a long time to find a coach that I feel like I resonated with and that I felt comfortable kind of ceding that autonomy, some of it, of course, of like saying, yes, I trust you to see things that I don't see, and I trust you to come up with ideas I wouldn't have, and I want to share all the details of my business and my personal life with you, so much so that I believe you're going to listen honestly and authentically and help me out. So the reason that high performers need a coach is the same reason that athletes need a coach. I believe it's episode 16, 17, or 18 of the podcast. One of the first 10 to 20 was with a friend of mine's dad. His name is Todd Mesra. We call him T-Mez in the episode. That's the nickname that he goes by pretty universally. And he shared a concept with us that stuck called the business athlete. The business athlete is basically saying that in every sport, right, every Olympian, every other sport person has a coach. Every football player, that's a good example. Football's a sport. I went to Alabama. We had a football team there from what I heard from my co-eds, other students. And basically, no one expects athletes to perform at their best without a coach. There's things that someone on the sidelines can see that the person playing the game cannot see. That is 100% true of a business person. In sports, it is very well understood that your athleticism, right? Let's break that down into like video game type characteristics, right? Your speed, your strength, your skills, maybe in football, like your arm, if you're a thrower, quarterback. Those are skills that everyone expects. The culmination of improving all of those skills to result in the accumulative, maybe, improvement of you as a football player. And the same is true of business. So I think some of the component skills in business, right? How effectively do you project manage? How effectively do you manage your time? How effectively do you manage your energy, right? If you're someone who has structured your life to feel incredibly creative and high energy and positive from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., you're probably going to expect to get a lot done and to make really good decisions. And then that compounded over a very long period of time is going to lead to good business outcomes. The same is also true in terms of a coach and or a therapist. I don't really have much of a strong opinion as to which one's better, nor am I a mental health professional, though I would caution the word professional kind of in any domain, because not every person who achieves a credential is qualified. Just like I have no qualifications to be giving you any of this advice besides speaking from my own experience. But I did an episode with my friend Amir Barham, it was around 140, where he, and that's an abrupt change. So if someone thinks that's edited, I just changed that abruptly. Amr had the saying, which I've heard many times since then, that people don't have business problems, they have personal problems, because basically something is blocking you in your life unrelated to your business that is preventing you from getting to the next level. So for example, if you aren't able to delegate things to your team, that's because you have this limiting belief that you're the only person who can do anything. You have issues trusting other people, you have issues letting go, and something that a therapist might be able to help you with. Or maybe you don't hire good employees because you don't think you're worthy of those employees. And so maybe you need to work with a therapist to address those underlying feelings of not worthiness. I think that's enough to be said about working with a coach. I cannot express more strongly how positive of an experience I've had working with my coach, Vash. But of course, there's many coaches out there. And this is something I would highly entertain consider entertaining either way. Anyway, takeaway number 2, looking at my cheat sheet again. Very business heavy. What am I doing with my hands? The second takeaway is the importance of having a well-defined problem. So early on in this podcasting journey, I wanted to interview people who had started businesses successfully, because it's really easy to find people who've tried to start businesses, and it's slightly, if not dramatically, more difficult to find people who have done it successfully. And I was like, okay, so I'm sitting here, I haven't started a business yet. What is the difference between the people who make it and the people that don't? Right? Very basic question, and I think a very worthwhile one to explore. Obviously, I continue to explore it. But the one thing that I found in common, right, if there's several ingredients that are necessary for the cake, if you will, of making a business, I think that, right, there's multiple right ways of doing it, and not everyone does it this way. But from what I found from interviewing several people who took different paths, I said there's a consistent theme among the paths that most resemble the life I would like to live. And that was this. When their business was started on accident, and or when their business was started with a very specific problem, their life was so much easier. A couple examples of this from the early episodes. There's one with Joe Puccio, who started an app called Coursical, which helps college students schedule their classes. So if you want to get into a class that starts at 10 a.m., but all the seats are full and you're stuck in the one that starts at 8 a.m., you basically sign up for a notification the second someone at 10 a.m. switches to another class. You get the notification, you join that class. And basically that just started because Joe was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to have to wake up early, and had the idea for solving that problem. He had no intention of forming a business out of it. It just kind of happened. Another one is with a friend of mine as well. I've kind of blurred the line between if I was friends with these people before the podcast or after it, which is another really cool life benefit takeaway. However, not something we're here to talk about today. Ethan is actually someone I was friends with before the podcast. And Ethan has a speech and debate software company called Extemp Genie, where he helps high school speech and debate students automate the process of researching for tournaments. Basically, his competitive event is when you need to enter a room, you're given a topic, you don't have internet access, and hopefully you basically brought with you on a flash drive or saved to your computer, again, without internet access, but you can still have files and storage, a article or resource relevant to that topic. So Ethan's idea was, well, what if I just automatically scrape all of the most relevant news articles from the previous week? I'm more than likely going to have something to help me with this. He started it, and again, had no intention of turning it into a business, but when other people found out about it, they were organically very, very excited about it. So effectively, what these two people both had in common was they had a personal problem. They didn't want to take 8 a.m. classes, or they didn't want to go into one of these competitions unprepared, and they also didn't want to do the work to prepare in a super inefficient way. So they solved that problem for themselves, and then when other people who had that same problem found out about the solution, there was no convincing required to make them want that solution. They basically were begging, saying, where do I pay you? How do I get this? And that's a much easier place to start out with than saying, hey, I've just made the Uber for cats, and now you're going around trying to find cats to put in Ubers. It's like when you come up with a solution, there's maybe people who want it if the problem doesn't exist. But if the problem exists and you've genuinely solved it, then your only job is making people who have that problem aware of your solution. I've actually done this. I have a SaaS company myself called Instant Chapters, something that I started in February of this year, and maybe March. Instant Chapters was because I, as a podcast host, doing things on YouTube, where you are right now, looking around, is a platform where you like to timestamp your videos. And that's something that I was paying my editing team to do, to go through the video, write the timestamps, be like minute 0 through 2, Lewis rambles about coaches. Minutes 2 through 4, or however long it's been, he rambles about problems. That's what he rambles about. And they would write those timestamps down. It would take them a while. I would edit them, and then I'd put them in there, and then we'd publish it. And it took a lot of time, and it paid them to do it. And I was like, you know what? With this whole ChatGPT thing over here, and this whole AI transcription thing over here, and this whole everything else, I could probably just squash that all together and do it automated. So I had this problem of paying someone to make timestamps for me. I wanted to not pay them to do it. I came up with a solution that did it. And now this company is growing at a healthy pace. And literally the only marketing I am doing is sending emails to people who edit podcasts or have YouTube channels and being like, hey, remember how right now you're doing, remember how right now you're doing timestamps by hand? What if you didn't have to do that? Enter a solution, and people are opting in like crazy to buy it, which is so exciting. Third takeaway from me. Truth. Ooh, now we're in the philosophical territory. It's not just the truth. It is a commitment, a dedication to finding the truth and living based on what is true. Now, this is kind of fuzzy because, right, no one is the sole arbiter of truth. But there are certain things that when you accept them as facts in your life gets a lot easier. So one example that comes to mind here is kind of what I just said. So like I have decided to assume based on everything I've seen that the steps 1 and 2 on what I shared here are just facts. It's like I've seen enough examples. Obviously, I haven't met every person on earth and whatever, but there's certain things that in your life you are better off just assuming they are true. It's kind of like a leap of faith to be like, I'm just going to believe that this is true. And one of those things for me, right, was like, I've just seen time and time again. I have not met a single person, right? I've not met a single person. I've interviewed a lot of people who have regretted hiring a coach or therapist. Or even if they didn't stick with it, they still feel like it was valuable. And so that was enough for me to feel confident proceeding with it. And then obviously in times of the, let's call it 2020 to 2023 period, I noticed a lot of people were not so concerned with finding out what was true. They just wanted to find out what people agreed with. They just wanted to go along with the consensus, whatever that meant at the time. And that led to, in my opinion, unhappiness. Because when you think for yourself, you feel when you don't think for yourself, you are disempowered. And then you don't, right? Like we've discussed, empowerment in a state of feeling high energy, in a state of feeling creative is when good things happen to you. And disempowerment, feeling like a victim, is when less good things happen to you. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and you're kind of, attracting, not to get too woo-woo here, but you're attracting the energy, you're attracting the vibes that you put out. The other big form of honesty and truth is being true to yourself. So when you say to yourself, I don't like what I'm doing, and then you try to put on a face that's like, actually, I do like what I'm doing, that leads to not so ideal outcomes. And like, that's a really light way of putting it. It leads to really not good outcomes, bad outcomes. We're going to use the word bad, terrible outcomes. You go to bed at night and you're just thinking to yourself like, damn, I'm a fraud because I am living a lie every single day. And that really sucks. And so when you decide to kind of set the world ablaze and you say, this is true, I'm unhappy, I want to do this, I have to do this, then that is going to lead to a better set of outcomes. Number 4, bias towards action. This is one of the takeaways that when it kind of crystallized in my mind is like one of the consistent top 5 themes over time. I was like so tempted, excuse me. When this crystallized for me, I was tempted to rename the podcast the Bias Towards Action podcast. Fortunately, I didn't because I don't know. Oh, because the Lewis and Kyle show is the name of the show, and our interests change and our opinions change. Facts don't change, of course, but facts do change, right? Pluto. We don't have to talk about Pluto, but our names don't change. Our interests do, right? At the very beginning, we're like crypto, 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 crypto. It's still like crypto. When I say crypto, I mainly mean Bitcoin, but now it's like, as I'm running a business, I'm pretty concerned with like learning whatever is most relevant to helping me with the business. So when I was new to the business and not very good at sales, I was like, we need to interview sales experts and then marketing experts. And now that we have an AI product, I need to learn more about AI. And so my interests are kind of evolving with time. And because the podcast is named after me and Kyle, we have the flexibility to do that. Anyway, it's not the Bias Towards Action show. That is the 4th most popular, even though this is an unranked list. One of the top 5 takeaways of the podcast is the bias towards action. What does that mean? That means that 25, 30 minutes ago, 48 minutes ago, whatever it was, I was outside, pointing towards outside relative to where I am now, which is unhelpful for you, not on the other side of the camera. However, I was outside, kind of taking a nap, kind of meditating, kind of just sweating because it's hot outside and I needed to sweat. And inspiration struck me to make this freaking video. I was like, I have these ideas. I've seen so many people. Shout out Alex, no code Alex from Closify, Alex Hyde, and he's been on the podcast before. He inspires me so much because he, on his YouTube channel, his first videos were just not good relative to what they are now in terms of like production quality, right? He's always been delivering high quality content in the sense of like ideas that if you take seriously will lead to you making more money and improving your life. So he's always delivered value, but like, you know, his newsletter, he has all sorts of typos. It just doesn't matter. He just like puts stuff out there and just moves. And versus myself, right? In the past, I've had a tendency to like overthink. So it's like, I have an idea for a newsletter. Let me just step 1, brainstorm. Step 2, design the colors. Step 3, pick the font. Step 4, whatever, and then just never see it through versus just taking action. There's a quote from, I believe it's Naval. It says, inspiration is perishable, so take action when you're inspired. That was definitely not a quote. That was a paraphrase. That is not how the quote went, and nor am I going to pretend that's how the quote went. Anyway, that is the idea encapsulated in a book written by Eric Jorgensen about Naval. Anyway, when you have an idea, the inspiration is it is emotion. Inspiration is an emotion, right? And emotions are cyclical. You don't feel them after a certain period of time. If you're angry and you sit still for like 15 minutes and breathe deeply, the anger will pass, right? Like weather. And that is also true for positive emotions, right? It's like you'll get tired or you'll get hungry and a new emotional state has taken over and the inspiration is gone and you never see that thing through. So it is a very thin amount of time between having an idea and putting the idea into action and then putting it into a minimally complete form of action, right? Because writing it down in a draft in your Notes app to die, because that's what happens to most drafts in the Notes app, is better than letting the idea just like not be expressed in like a second brain where like it'll maybe be useful later. However, if you can just say, you know what, I'm gonna turn the camera on, I'm gonna record this video, I'm gonna pull the Twitter up, I'm gonna write it, I don't care if there's typos, I'm gonna send it. That at over time is how things happen. So it's like if Joe or Ethan, the people I talked about earlier from the SaaS companies, were like, okay, I've got this idea for automated software, now it has to be perfect before I tell anyone about it. Versus just, this works, this is a prototype. My instant chapters thing, my YouTube app, this was that principle in action. I was like literally driving home. I was driving from Arizona to Las Vegas. I live in Arizona. My parents live in Las Vegas. Both are home. It's confusing. And I was like, oh my God. I was on the phone with my friend Mateo. Shout out Mateo if you're getting this far. And I was like, you know what? Like, I just feel like I'm, my agency and the podcast editing team that I use is an agency. They're doing really well, but I want them to produce more for me, but I don't want to pay them more. How do I make that happen? Well, if I take things off their plate, then they'll have less to do, which means they can do more in less time, blah, 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 blah. I'm driving, right? This is me thinking while driving. Now I'm here. I'm really in this state of mind. So hands on the steering wheel, one hand maybe not on the steering wheel, maybe holding the thing over here, drinking some water. Who cares? That's not helpful for you understanding the story. I was like, okay, well, the chapters, that's something that should be automated because it, like I said earlier, kind of went like this. And I talked about ChatGPT. And then when I got home, literally that day, I was like, all right, give me the Python, give me the Google. Does this exist? Doesn't totally exist. Here's a GitHub repo, someone doing something similar. Maybe I can take some inspiration from that to help me come up with it. Bada bing, bada boom. Right? If you don't know how to code, the bada bing, bada boom was me pretending to code with my hands, I guess. And 2 hours later, I had a YouTube transcript, a YouTube link, a link to a YouTube video converted into timestamps using ChatGPT. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. I immediately used it for like half of my channel. It solved my problem. And I was like, boom, we got to take this to market. Call my business partner, Sean. I'm like, this is awesome. It solves a problem. We got to it's done. I know we have this other business and we're not trying to get distracted, but I want to launch a SaaS. No code Alex, my SaaS guy, he's been talking about SaaS. I've been getting his emails with the typos that are still super valuable and I got to rip it. And now we launched it and it's been amazing. And that actually led to me having a reputation for knowing how to kind of build custom AI stuff, which led to us getting a really cool custom AI project, which is now a whole division of our company. The point is, none of that would have happened if I sat on that freaking idea and did nothing with it and waited for the right time. And so I was like, hey mom, hey dad, my drive was good. Give me 2 hours. I need to do this right now. And my life is different because of that. All right, takeaway number 5 is optimism. I try to only interview happy people. I try to only interview people who are, again, maybe we have some conflict here at the surface level with idea number 3 about the truth. There are unhappy people out there. There are bad things happening in the world. However, there is absolutely no shortage of media covering the bad things happening in the world or media giving attention to unhappy people. That is certainly not the case. that is the thing that is certainly not happening. There's enough. There is no shortage of media. When I say media, I mean televised media. I mean written media. I mean tweets. I mean blog posts. I mean Medium posts. I mean Instagram posts. I mean other forms of posts of people, of Netflix shows, right? Of podcasts. That's a form of media. Of YouTube videos covering negative stuff. Talking about unhappy people making the content. The world's terrible. You're a victim. Everything sucks. There's enough of that. There's too much of it, actually. However, there is a dramatic shortage of happy people coming on camera smiling, being like, actually, the United States is the best place in the world to live. Actually, there has never been a better time to be alive. Actually, there has never been a better time to start a business. Actually, there's literally never been a more exciting moment than the moment you're in right now. Why aren't you smiling? Why aren't you like grateful to be here? You don't know how much longer you have. It's a miracle that you're even here. And let's just spread some positivity. And that is a consistent trait, because I will tell you the truth. The only people who want to be around negative people are negative people. And negative people, more often than not, are not as successful as happy people, because happy people are being happy and other people want to be around them. And it's a very virtuous cycle or a very vicious cycle, right? You either spiral up or you spiral down. So the people who spiral up together in terms of how much money they're making, how much happiness they're having, how much fulfillment they're having, how much positive impact they're having on the world. And the negative people spiral down together, how unhappy they are, how much everything sucks, reinforcing each other's beliefs, and it leads to bad things. So I have really ingested the power of a good attitude and the power of being in a good mood. I kind of ran an experiment. You could call it an experiment. It's not properly scientific. However, science, right? Anyway, we're not getting into that. The past couple months, where basically I've worked dramatically less than I worked. Let's say the past 6 to 60 days, I worked much less than I worked in the preceding 60 days. So the past 120 days, I worked as much as possible in the first 60 days and not as much as possible in the second 60 days. What I did instead was focus on being in a good mood. So what does that mean? That means spending a lot of time meditating, spending a lot of time exercising, spending more time sleeping, spending more time journaling, spending more time doing visualization, spending more time writing my goals, spending more time thinking positive thoughts, spending more time reminding myself of positive memories, spending more time practicing the emotional state of happiness, of joy, of excitement, of optimism. And there's a line from Vash, my coach, which is what you practice, you become. So I spent all of this time practicing happiness, being happy, because everything's a habit, including emotions. And there you go, I'm happier. So the point of this experiment was basically right, how am I measuring the output of my life right now, right? Not the value of my life, but in the absence of a metric, the growth of my business is the best quantifiable indicator I have as to are the things I'm doing working? Because the things I'm trying to do are in service of trying to grow the business. And if the business is growing, then obviously there's a correlation causation here, but I'm doing the best. You can criticize, or you can say, this is the best we have, so this is what I'm going to work with here. But the correlation causation between being happier and good business outcomes, such as increased revenue. And my close rate has increased dramatically. My successful partnership rate in terms of being hey, we have ideas for how we could work together. Can we get on the phone and talk about those ideas from working together? And then when you get on the sales call, in days 0 through 60, when you're not focusing on happiness, you're just focusing on working and just doing your thing. It's hey, I'm Lewis. I got to change the state here. It's body language, tired, right? Kind of slumpy, kind of looking back, kind of distracted, whatever. I'm Lewis. I'm tired. I do data. I do analytics. I do AI. You do that. Money. You give me money. You send me your clients. You want to introduce the people that you spent all this time building a relationship with to me. Not in a good mood. Not happy to be here. Versus post-happiness being post-happiness, right? It's a period of time, and there's clearly some honeymoon effects going on here. However, because of how recent it is, versus being getting on the sales call and being oh my goodness, how are you? It is a beautiful day. I cannot believe it's the summer in Arizona. I've been waiting for this all year. What are we here to talk about again? Obviously not being so happy and distracted that you seem unprofessional, but getting on the phone. It is so good to meet you. I have such these amazing ideas. I'm so excited for this chance to speak with you. I've admired your work for a long time, and I just show up so energetic that they're I want that associated with my brand. I want to introduce my clients to that person because I'm, again, spreading positivity. So I would say those are 5 really powerful takeaways from myself about the podcast, about things I have learned from interviewing so many incredible people. I want to express how grateful I am to everyone I've interviewed on the show for sharing that moment of, I don't know what this meant, that moment of their life with me. I learn a ton from it. I reflect on them often. Myself and Kyle always are finding ourselves in conversations. He'll say something and I'll be like, oh, that's kind of like what Wes KO said back in episode 25 about this, and that. And I think it was actually episode 28. And, the brand marketing spectrum, the spiky point of view, like these frameworks and these lessons and these anecdotes have stuck so deeply in my mind that I have become dramatically more effective because of them. So I would encourage you to leave whatever feedback you have from this video in the comments, to check out an episode of the podcast if you want to learn more about all of these amazing people that have inspired me and improved my life so dramatically. And if you want more of this style of video, I'm very keen to get some feedback from you. So leave a comment, send me a DM on Twitter, and find a way to get in touch if you have something to say. Otherwise, I hope you have the best day of your entire life, and we'll talk later. See ya.